Welcome everyone to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How's everybody doing? So now here we are at the end of an age and moving into a new age. And we have a small group of people on the planet that are wanting to direct us and to preemptively move us into this new age. Their sort of rendering of this new age. But they know that at the end of every cycle, there is a shift, there is a conflict, there is a catastrophe, and there is a group on this planet that are contriving it, are making this happen, and we know this, and we're seeing it happen. It's coming out full. And so the reason why I say that is because part of the spiritual mission is to help prepare us for those shifts, to move us into these new eras, right? And that's a big part of everything that's kind of taking place, especially from my perspective. And it kind of leads us to the age-old battle that's taking place and that we're sort of a part of. And part of the tarot mission, part of this channel is to help combat the information war and the spiritual war that's taking place, that's purposely being projected and perpetuated on the vast majority of people on the planet. And we're acting energetically and spiritually to offset what these controllers, this small group of people are attempting to do, to coerce and to manipulate people's perceptions, and for us to continue in this age-old dialectic dilemma of the controlled and the controllees, I guess, the controllers and the controlled. I try not to use too much dualistic rhetoric because that's kind of what's been taking place. But it really is this battle between the light and the dark, and those that choose to see the light of awareness of spirit within them, and those that refute it versus those that refute it, those that are attempting to control, those that seek power. That's the true battle. So here we are. And and the reason why I say this is because we are really in the end of the age of Pisces. And spiritually and energetically, and especially using astrology as a template, everything that we're seeing is sort of, it's very significant of the ending of that age and moving into this new age. This week we saw so much stuff again. There were so many things. Let me just check my notes here. It's almost too much, right? We saw Henry Kissinger die, who is another one of these old guard public figures, agent of the deep state that has been helping form foreign policy for the last 50 years for the Western world, and was, this guy just, it's kind of a sign, right? That was one thing. The usual thing. So we got the old guard dying out, and elements of that old guard still sort of in play, like King Charles, who's another one that's been there for 50 years. Plus, he's pushing the climate agenda at the COP28 climate summit that's going on right now. But he's been very vocal, and it's very obvious that he's a globalist, right? And he's part of that old guard, right? And another one is Joe Biden. He's been there the whole time. We could go through a whole list, right? Big thing is pushing this climate agenda as parts of it are falling apart, like the electric vehicle scam is coming to roost, right? And there's a battle going on between what the governments are trying to implement with their net zero and the carbon taxing and the control, like implementing a control grid, but getting rid of combustion vehicles and implementing this electric vehicle system, which is Doesn't make any sense, right? And so people are starting to wake up to this, but they're pushing it. They're really pushing it. And so, right, King Charles saying that if we don't act immediately, we're all doomed. Well, he was saying that 40 years ago, and they've been saying it consistently every year, and it never comes to pass. None of their climate predictions come to pass, right? Except now what's really starting to happen is they are being very upfront, these global elitists and these groups, the NGOs and the governments that are working together and within the intelligence communities to push this agenda, but they're really being obvious about censoring anybody that speaks out against that, against climate, okay? The other one is the COVID. All of the stuff with the vaccines is coming out. There was a whistleblower in New Zealand. Who knows what is really going on, but it's alarming, the evidence that's coming out about how much damage has been done with the vaccines, okay? So, and then on that note, and for the last couple of weeks, they've been trying to push this and this sort of idea of a new virus or a new catastrophe in that manner, but from China, this super virulent pneumonia that has made its way to the West somehow, in some way. Well, we know how, but it's such a scam, and it's so obvious. So, and really what it kind of leads to is this idea of a war against the people. There's been a biological agent released, and we've been circumstanced by it. We are the victims of it. That's being covered up right now as we speak. And then what's coming out in the Jim Jordan's weaponization of the federal government in the United States is how much Google and YouTube are also involved in that whole debacle and this whole idea. And then there was the partner of Matt, what's his name? The Twitter guy, his partner Schellenberger was also in Congress talking about the UK and the United States, and with these groups, these front agencies or these front companies, these NGOs that they've formed to censor and to conduct psychological operations against people, especially around COVID and during the 2020 and also around the elections, I guess, too, right? And it's a huge can of worms, okay? This is more proof positive, like they are right out in the front, out in the open. Their authoritarian system is right there for everybody to sort of see, whether they want to see it or not, right? That's another thing. And then you got Elon Musk making moves again and lipping off the advertisers that are trying to blackmail him on Twitter. And kudos to him for speaking out. But then on the other hand, what is he really up to? You know, he speaks. You got to be really careful with characters like him. You like some of the things that he says, but then he turns around and does the most bizarre things, like putting out this Cybertruck and still pushing this idea that he has somehow help the environment more than anybody else. Well, man, your battery production and like it's terrible what it takes to make these batteries and the results of this. Okay, and it's part of this agenda, and it's almost like what he's trying to do is replace the deep state's agenda with his own. Okay, same thing like his failed Starship, and it's like it's on purpose, you know. So you got to watch that. I mean, I like him speaking up for freedom of speech, and that's what you kind of see. Ireland, perfect test zone. So you got, like, they were talking about New Zealand, which is another little test zone because it's a small populace to test, you know, to test out on, to beta test. And the same thing with Ireland after the incident last week and the draconian crackdown on free speech, and especially white Irish or people that are speaking out against the crazy migration policies. And yeah, they're just, it's crazy. right? And it's there to show people like, holy cow, we have these totalitarian, authoritarian, fascistic, dictatorial people in our midst. They're everywhere. Like General Flynn was talking a while ago about how 80% he thinks of all of Congress and the government, like especially, I think he said Congress though, but 80% are compromised. And I agree with this. Our governments, our institutions, the corporations that are connected to them through the ESG or the DEI or the sort of these global imperatives that they keep pushing, that's the source of the compromise. Okay, and these people are trying to push and continue to push this idea of a global governance, of a global system, which is already there. There's elements of it there already. Same thing like with the push on the currency, right? And so, wow, amazing. We live in amazing times. It's science fiction has come to life, and I'm just talking about some of the mainstream things that are presented, because really, like what I said, is we're battling a psychological war. We're battling a group of people that don't have humanity's best interest in mind. In fact, they want to eliminate humanity, and people need to wake up to this, and they are, right? But it's imperative now that we really pay attention, because if we don't push back, if we don't, we will be locked into a system we'll never be able to get out in our lifetimes. That's what I feel. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I really, really hope I'm wrong, right? The other part of that, though, is how amazing humans are, and how humans do find a way, and truth and freedom and love and well-being always finds a way. It always finds a way. And this is the thing that we have to keep in mind. Like, miraculous things happen when people become aligned in the right way and towards the right things, right? And so, like, fighting for humanity, what's wrong with that? We have to come to sort of understand that a lot of our ideas that have been perpetuated by experts in these groups of people, it's been on purpose to throw us off, to put us into the situation right now where we accept their great reset or their shift into a new order. It's part of also I think this thing of shifting into the next astrological age, into the age of Aquarius, into the next large motion that humanity needs to go through as part of our evolution. And this dark side intention, this modality that we're battling, is part of the cosmic plan, right? But the thing is, these guys, they know they need to step down. They know that in the shifting of the ages, this takes place. This has taken place many times before, and it's going to happen again. Okay. And so, all right, and like, they know this. This is part of it, and part of that, if you want to even say it's like a prophecy, because it is in many ways, is that they get deposed, that they get thrown down, and that we take over, that the people take what has been built in the world and rectifying it and reforming it and shifting it and transforming it to a state of well-being rather than a state of enslavement. So, and it's so cool, and that's kind of what the Age of Aquarius is really about. And I know the CIA and the M16 and them and the Tavistock Institute and these guys have had their hands in to manipulate cultural perceptions, and especially around like New Age spirituality and this kind of notion. I know that, but we are combating it. There is also another side of that, and that's what people have called, whatever you want to call that other side, that are there to battle it, that are there to reclaim what comes from an original source, or to reclaim that knowledge. In esoteric circles, that goes back to Atlantis and this idea that the beginning of war begins with these kind of notions. That at the end of the Atlantean age and the catastrophe that brought the Atlanteans into a new world afterwards, that a segment of that group was this dark side group, and this other segment was this group that recognized the oneness, the children of the one. And that battle has been going on for thousands and thousands of years. And here we are, we're still in it. And that's why the spiritual part of it is so important. That's why the tarot is very important as well. Tarot is just a tool. There might come a time where we no longer need it. Same with any of the stuff that comes from the ancient world. But yet there is going to be a continuation. And that's what the tarot talks about. And the tarot is there because, people, for the most part, the people that watch this are tuned in. And they like it, they're into it, they want to learn, they understand on a intuitive level what its nature is. And in a lot of ways, it gets passed over by people that don't have the awareness to sort of see it. So in a way, it's a good tool to sort of offset what's happening in this information war and these psychological operations that have been being conducted against us. And it helps us stay ahead of them in some way, shape, or form. What's more important is the energy and connecting to that energy. It's more about the connection. And that's what people have to kind of get down with. So here we are. So here, let's take a look. Let's just connect with Source and see what guidance we need to hear and what's going to come up for the next week or two. And we'll just take it from there. Okay, past, present, future. And we've got we've got major arcanas all over it. We got 3 major arcanas here. So in a lot of ways, this is like a continuation of like a major lesson that we need to go through. And this is what we've known. I talked about this right at the beginning, the shift of the ages, okay? The natural shift of the ages versus the contrived shift of the deep state or of the dark side, let's call it, or the elitist cabal that wants to control everything. So we know that we're kind of moving through this. And so what's actually happening, this is kind of what we're being prepared for, is like we have been strengthened. Our life force, those that are in the spiritual battle, those that are spiritually aware and have to kind of engage a lot of this stuff, our energies are being drawn up, right? This in so many ways for all of us energetically, this, because I mean the hermit represents the past, right? But yet this is also the teachings. This is the teacher. This can be like secret societies sometimes, right? And this is kind of what we're talking about, is these elitists existing in these little circles. But then the spiritual impulse of the people and how the initiation of both kind of takes place, right? Well, we've been kind of initiated by the dark side, and we are to rectify some of that. Some of us, like, this is past also. So what's interesting is a lot of past stuff is coming up for people. Past, like things you haven't thought about for years and years and years. It's coming up because it's time to release it. This is what helps restore the energetic field. This is what the strength card represents, is the life force. She is kind of an interesting one. She's an initiate. She wears the rose garland that the Rosicrucians utilize as a symbol of being initiated in the secrets, right? Or in the secret tradition. But it's also this thing of the blood of Christ, of the sacrifice, but the rose going back to the ancient world being the symbol of the rebirth and the regeneration, and how all of the ancient gods were born in an ancient lotus, which the lotus became the rose. Okay, so she wears this as her symbol, but it's a representation of divine love. And the ego of the lion, right? And how she's taming the lion, how she's preventing it from snapping its jaws with her hands, but it's through love, right? And there's a continuation here. This continuation, this energetic flow, right? And you can kind of see it. And so they have apprehended the light. This is what we're getting at. The lion represents the divine light, the astral light, and they have apprehended it. They have taken it. They, the elitist cabal, these groups that we're battling against, and they have perverted it and demented it to what we're seeing now. And it's like clear across the board. Like we could talk about all sorts of stuff, and they've had their hands in almost all of it. And we're shifting it. We're changing it. Restoring the core of the family, restoring the core of self, and how that connects to larger communities and how it connects to the world. And it has to be done. This is what's going on, right? So the past needs to come up. If there's any kind of past healing that needs to take place individually, it has to take place now. And it's the time of the year too. We're approaching in, the Christmas time, moving into the solstice, right? The solstice period is part of that rebirth, of that shift. And we move, the sun starts to move upward or higher and higher in the sky in the northern hemisphere, but it's the shift, right? Down in the southern hemisphere, it marks the summer, the peak of the season, right? So, but it's an energetic shift that we go through, right? And so we're being prepared. I take the winter solstice in the north as the beginning of the year, right? Like the Christmas time is the beginning is the new year for me. Okay. And so we go through this energetic release before that time period. Okay. And all of humanity also, but this is kind of an individual thing because we really do have a big impact. You might not think, you at home, sitting and just maybe even just watching some of these videos and that's about it. That is a huge impact, like even putting your mind there. And so like, that's the thing is if we could sit in moments of silence and prayer, connection, intention, amazing things happen. And peace and well-being can be restored, right? And this is where we have a big impact. It's very important to keep the thoughts clear and clean. And some of us, we can't be with our families. Some of us, we can't be connected with people right now because humans are messed up. The vast majority of humanity is very messed up. A lot of people are walking around and it's toxic to be around them, right? Or walking around, like just connections wise, right? And so and some of us are going through that where we have to kind of go through that. It's not going to be permanent though. See, and that's the thing is you have to maintain a positive outlook on how things are going to be. We're going to get through this year. This is for sure. There is going to be a human future. Our kids, our grandkids, our grandkids onward are going to have a future. Right? And so in that restoring of that energy is really important. Holding on to the past, right? This is a major life lesson that humans have to go through of being present, recognizing the past, but not being attached to it. And then this thing of attempting to project yourself into a future. We need to be present. That's where she sits. That's where the strength card sits. Okay. Because what's coming is war is coming. We're already in it. More of it. More. If you thought, oh man, this has been crazy, get ready. There's more. They really want us in a fearful place. The Fool reversed is It's kind of an interesting, because it really does represent the fool, right? The dumbed down, ignorant mass, the silent majority that refuse to take part because it's too scary. It's too, I can't put myself out there. That's normal, and that's a normal part of the human condition, right? But it's being used against us. And so like the next thing is like, well, we know, we've already been talking about this for months and months and months. Climate, economy, and war. These three are the thing that they're trying to push on people, attempt a lockdown with, right? Especially in this week. I mean, there's a ramp up of this thing with Israel and Palestine. Yeah, and just like continuing to inflict the Western world, like us in the Western world, with this circumstance of like the mass migration and the division with this Israel-Palestine thing, and using it to attack us, like essentially, and that's what's coming. And so people need to speak up. They need to speak up. They need to speak up and not fall into the situation and not necessarily fight back. It has to be done in peace, but they're going to use it against us. And this is what we warned, like even before, like last month, it was sort of like I saw that they were going to start using this idea of, the far right. Everything is far right. Well, only leftists, only communists do that. If you're a far leftist, if these people don't agree with your worldview, then they are far right. And that's their whole game plan. And so people have to get down with this. You can't mince words. Like, I mean, watching the mainstream media and these people trying to pussyfoot around issues and and I get it. Like I have to a certain degree as well to stay here, but they know, a lot of these guys that are on whatever, anything mainstream, they know most of them are compromised, and it's on purpose, and they all have agendas, right? So that's kind of that's what we're talking about here, right? Is this is sort of like the contrived shift with the tower, right? In the money system. But like this, and this is also why I'm talking about the intuition and kind of really being and being more connected spiritually to seek answers rather than outwardly. Because like, I mean, this is the thing, like they're actively attacking like people's ability to grow food. Like that's one of the things that they're gonna go after, is the food, after farming, after like they were doing it with fertilizer and demifying like carbon dioxide and trees is absolutely ridiculous. And so you can't play into it, and it has to be called out. But it's like energetically connecting to source and seeking guidance, because we're being shown like our communities and like this idea of getting into like community markets and getting your food from not mainstream sources if you can, because they're messing with everything. They really are. And so and they can't stop that, right? And the more and more people are doing it, that's the thing. And that's actually what a lot of people are starting to say. Thank God. You're starting to hear it more and more, is that they're noticing like the governments in the world, in the Western world especially, aren't following the wishes of the people. They're going against the wishes of people. Thing with the environment is a really good example. Okay, let's see what else, and then we'll wrap it up. We got a few things there. We got more kind of social media. Let's actually try to see exactly what's going to happen. They got anything planned? What do we got to be prepared for next? This is interesting. I kind of like this. Is a nice card actually. And it's good alignment here. This is the coming together. This is people coming together, not being split apart. The thing with Israel and Palestine is so difficult. man, so it's hard to not be divided by it. So, but the thing is like, whether you're on one side or another, it's so obvious that you're, like you're on this side or that side. The people that are above you, the people that are calling the shots, the people that are saying things, talking about this, are lying, and that you don't know what to believe. Right? And that's a big thing, and I guess it's happening all over. The thing with Israel and Palestine is very obvious to me. So obvious. I mean, we saw Joe Biden give Iran $6 billion. It's the same thing. Hamas is funded in the same way, or was, right? A lot of the infrastructure they're using in Gaza was first built by the Israelis, right? And I don't know, man. It's such a mess, right? And this is what we've got to deal with. It's well known in many circles that ISIS, Al Qaeda, the Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of them funded by intelligence communities, CIA, M16, Mossad, right? Totally against terrorism. I do not support terrorism at all. I do not support violence at all. And I don't support genocide at all. I really do believe both people have the right to exist. People have the right to exist everywhere and anywhere. This idea of a legitimate claim and this and that is for them to decide. The foreign powers, they have to stay out of it, but yet it's all been contrived right from the get-go. So, but that's what I'm saying. It's become obvious. It's right in people's faces. So there's a huge opportunity for this, and people finding sort of more unity around sort of recognizing like a little bit clearer who is the true enemy. But this is the kind of dialogue that's needed. We need to have this more and more and more and more, right? Because this is really what's shifting. This is what we've known in the Western world, in the world that has been free, with the comparison of the communist world going back into the Cold War, about how they weren't free, how these people weren't free. They weren't able to pursue this idea of like freedom of speech and the ability to just communicate, and how that has such a huge influence, okay? Yeah, more like tons of stuff coming out about social media and these platforms, and how much government and these corporate entities and these NGOs have colluded, have collaborated, have coordinated, right? That's more of that is going to come out. Meanwhile, too, there's this thing with the UFOs and this retrieval. And it's just so wild. Like, why is that coming out now? Well, we know why. It's part of the info war. They're using tidbits of true information and throwing it at us and distracting us. Like complete distraction. It's come out. How many people have died from the vaccine? See, and that's the thing. Like, that's kind of what I was leading to with in the first part of the reading. The more we communicate and the more we connect spiritually, the more the answers start to come forward. The more the right people come forward. There are a lot of good people in health and well-being and doctors and nurses and stuff. But while the system is the way that it is, they have no other choice. But there's breakaways. There's people that have fully broken away and no longer willing to go down that route, right? And we're going to be shown more and more of that stuff because that's what's needed. And it's so funny. They've been pushing this thing with the economy, and it just is one of those things. The same with the climate. I guess this could be a climate card too, because this is the Earth, like the 10 of Pentacles. Yeah, they keep pushing this thing and it just never happens. And we're just like, huh? And many of us that are wise to it, that have been paying attention for decades, they've been doing this for decades and decades and decades. Man, religious dogma. Whenever I see this card, the Judgment card, I think of religion, and I think of religious dogma. And I think of how dogma and truth like religious truth or spiritual truth, this is what's at odds. Okay. And the dilemmas, a lot of the dilemmas that we see in the world can be rooted in religious dogma. Okay. Can also be rooted in spiritual truth, but there's a lot of religious dogma that is part of the negative karma of what's going on right now. And we have to sort of not play into it as best as we can, and to sort of really promote this thing of not avoiding the world, but detachment from untruth and connection with what is true to us and what's truly in the heart, and not to allow that worldview, the infrastructure, these people to poison us, right? And I point to this Ace of Cups here, because it's like a poisoned heart. This is a poisoned cup. It needs to be turned over. It needs to be flipped over. It needs to be emptied out in order for it to be filled again. Okay, but yet this is what we're dealing with, is the hurt and traumatized nature of humanity, and us that are in the awakened camp, I guess. We are here to help in that healing process. So we need to recognize that it's good and it's positive that it's all coming to the surface. It can't remain hidden. You can't deal with it if it's hidden. How do you know what to fight if you don't know who your enemy is? How do you know how to fight your enemy if you don't know what his end game, his agenda is? Well, that's what's happened. All of it has come out. And so it's good. We can't let it disempower us. We need to be empowered by it, because it is our opportunity to make that shift. And we do see the positive results all around us. And that's what we got to be focused on, is like, man, the positive results of all of the things that have taken place in the last 5 or 6 years, 10 years, all of us, sort of the sacrifices that we've made and the things that we've had to do, it's working. It's awesome. And it's from that we find true empowerment. Okay, everybody, I hope you enjoyed. So if you did, leave a like and hit that subscribe button. And I hope every one of you is having a wonderful day or evening, and please take care. Bye-bye.